Oh, that's much better. Welcome everyone. Welcome to the first MetaNet event. Very glad you can all make it. This is the first of hopefully many events which will be running every 3 months consecutively, and then possibly a conference next year. But one of the key things we want to do is spread the MetaNet events to everyone. So this is a kind of beta testing. As you've all seen, with the clicking of the MoneyButton, we have various tickets, receipt sales. This can be done a lot better, and we will be showing you all how to do that. But I'm going to backstep a bit, and we're going to, first of all, explain a little bit of where we are now with MetaNet. So, Bitcoin. Bitcoin, first of all, everyone in the normal cryptocurrency space thinks it's just a medium of exchange, from passing money from A to B. This was just the first step. This was a foundation which needs to be set in stone and shall be set in stone. This was a foundation for something more. The MetaNet, which MetaNet is a storage and retrieval mechanism. You can store items, you can store music, digital goods, digital content, and then you can sell it. Yet, you need more. You can't just create a storage facility. You need businesses, you need profit, you need identity. When you're selling items online, on-chain, it's good to have copyright. If you're uploading your music or artwork, you want to be able to say, this was mine. With Bitcoin and with MetaNet, you are now able to do that. And with timestamping on the blockchain, this copyrights your work. As an artist or content creator, when they've uploaded their music, if anyone else uploads their music or any other game or anything similar at a further time, later time, then they won't be able to actually stand against you if you say that actually I uploaded it first, this art, music product belongs to me. But also with the MetaNet, when you're using the atomic swaps correctly, which is a case of not just buying and selling Litecoins and various other altcoins and trading, atomic swaps, from my personal point of view, was always meant for something else. If you buy an item, then you receive the good at the same time, and all contributors get paid. The MetaNet isn't just about a single artist or a single creator. If you, as someone who's made something which you needed 5 or 10 people to make this creation with, you can then put it up on the MetaNet and you can sell it to people. And when it's sold, all your collaborators can get paid at the same time. Multiple outputs can sort this out for you. And not many people have been using it. In the old version, BTC, it was kind of broken. So yes, multiple outputs will help you as collaborators and content creators put your music and your videos and other people's on-chain and allow it to be sold. Yet when you tie in identity, which is where we get PayMail, who's a PayMail? Everyone there? There's a PayMail? Right. When you have identity in PayMail, you get a bit more. You get a bit of a further stage. So PayMail, it can be basically your signature. At the moment, a lot of you have probably only got PayMail. And you think, yeah, that's my unique thing. But how can you prove it's yours? When you get further businesses which allow you as a user to attach your PayMail, plus your name, plus your picture, plus various other identification you can upload, and then you have a database of yourself, your own profile, which can be used in other places. For example, you could upload a passport, date of birth. If you have another business which says, okay, we will accept their verification, and then this can be used as a kind of ticketing ID, a global ID service, basically.
So that's quite interesting. So just to recap, for anyone that's pretty new to BitcoinSV, so I won't lie, I'm not going to teach you about Bitcoin. There's plenty more experts about Bitcoin, but I think what it's about is just giving a bit of context. So obviously people are familiar with Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, but with the ability, as I'm right, understanding that by sharing a transaction, we can put on-chain data, and that allows us to do a whole host of other things. We call that the MetaNet, almost a kind of competitor to the internet, where things value and information is given value. So I suppose what Joel is trying to give a bit of context is that there's whole new paradigms to business, whole new paradigms to how business can function using Bitcoin. And I suppose we should definitely give a bit of context tonight, because there's all different varied expertise in this room, and it's an absolute pleasure that everyone's been able to join us tonight for this first exclusive event, very exclusive. And we should say actually, we've got a couple of prizes. What's our prize?
We will be having music later and mixing with the networking, and we're going to be giving away these
beautiful
shiny coins to people which dance the best, which shall be voted upon by everyone
Dance
else.
the best?
Dance off, isn't it?
Oh right, okay, dance off.
Dance best during Sam's particular tap tracks, which I'm sure you will recognise with names. Drops.
Yeah.
and basically, yeah, these are going to be given out, and that will be chosen by everyone else who's cheering.
But some of the themes tonight that we wanted to discuss, why don't we just say some of the themes just to add a bit of context. So we've said the magic word MetaNet, and you've kind of given a synopsis of the MetaNet. And Ryan X, hopefully you're going to come up and explain a little bit about your thoughts on Bitcoin and where it's going, that sort of thing. But to take Bitcoin further than just a medium of exchange, which is an incredible thought process in itself, and presents an incredible opportunity. The whole idea of musicians, artists filling up those block sizes, more transactions, more utility coming to Bitcoin. I suppose if anything, we want to inspire people tonight, isn't it?
Oh, it goes further. It goes further. Once you have identity, and you have content uploading, and you have people trading, and all of you guys, there's so many businesses which can be made right now. Every business which is on the internet can be transplanted. And
so that's quite interesting. Every business can be transplanted. Can you give a coffee shop?
See,
someone makes coffees.
A coffee shop. Here's a brief example. Make a tablet. Integrate MoneyButton, add some receipt functions in the return, create some multiple outputs in the MoneyButton. So the staff, you can say to the staff, you get paid as things get sold. And then cafes, they have tips. This could be part of their tip. And then you sell the tablet to the cafe, and that's it. When they go to the customers, just swiping the money button, the receipts. If you imagine all the receipts out of bars and pubs that everybody uses, they never need to do that again. It's all on the blockchain.
Streamlining. This is almost streamlining the processes of current businesses out there, and I suppose also the utilisation of the BitcoinSV blockchain to streamline those processes. So almost would it be possible the coffee bean, like the sourcing of the coffee beans, the verification of the origin of the coffee beans, would that be possible as well?
When you get into tokenization on the MetaNet, then yes, you can tokenize basically everything. Coffee beans, the whole supply train, if you start from the beginning and you basically tokenize every little bit, so that as things get produced and sold at a bar, if anything goes wrong, that supply chain can be inspected.
Bad coffee beans,
bad coffee beans,
from that place.
Or manufacturing, when sometimes specialised manufacturing goods will go missing. And if you're able to trace that through tokenize or other methods, and then you'll be able to see where it's gone missing. And
do you think it would be a good thing if we have the microphone? Any kind of questions in this that people could interact perhaps? We've got our magic microphone here. Am I allowed to pass this to Ryan? Because I can see he's kind of itching to join us in the chat there. Is that possible? Ryan, why don't you take that, my friend? This has got a magic red button there. If you hold it down for 4 seconds, it turns live. Well, you could join us if you want. Why don't you come and join us? There's a microphone there as well. So it's so important that we do inspire people, because the next generation of businesses and people that use these processes, and in the timeline of things, gentlemen, we have got a pretty packed year this year in the road to Genesis. The road to Genesis is obviously the restoration of BitcoinSV to, what's it, unlimited blocks?
Unlimited blocks, but also MetaNet usage. Unfortunately, Owen's not here, but we were going to have a bit of a discussion on the MetaNet protocol. You've probably seen Unwriter's writings and some work on Jack Davies, the upside down tree diagrams. This is data structures, network structures. When people, and there's Libix and others who are working on it, when they work on it a bit more, they make it a bit easier, people will be able to basically, all of you will be able to just upload things and have it in a chain format, like photo albums. Or products, you know, if you have a website and you have pages this side, pages that side, people are already creating the easy platforms where you can go, this is my website, I would like it on the MetaNet.
Ryan, any thoughts to add to that? So it's a pretty busy year. We've got 2 gigabyte upgrade in July, so that's what, 3-4 days time? Is that going to be kicking off?
Well, I can't speak for the node developers, but I'll speak about. I'll speak from the perspective of MoneyButton. So I'll say that for scaling, you know, we've. So I've been around Bitcoin for a long time, and you know, it was clearly always the vision from the beginning for anybody that looks at what people were talking about originally, particularly Satoshi, to have big blocks. It's very odd the way things turned out, where what everyone calls Bitcoin has this strictly limited maximum block size, which is just absolutely, definitely not the original idea. So we've been waiting for something, you know, like, I shouldn't say waiting, I'll say that we wanted something like this to happen where we can just scale on-chain. And that just means raising the maximum block size and getting rid of all these arbitrary limits. So the fact that particularly nChain and also CoinGeek were able to finally execute on making the software actually just scale is a huge deal that this is happening now. So in spite of all this drama that we went through for several years where there were all these endless debates and currency splits and things like that, ultimately in many ways it was for the better, because now there's a team that's actually making the software do exactly what it needs to do, sort of, you know, on time. Because if we waited a whole lot longer, I mean, you have to pay the miners the fees, so it wouldn't ultimately work. You can't just hang around waiting for other people to just make this happen. So nChain and CoinGeek is, you know, Jimmy likes to say that Calvin is a sort of behind-the-scenes savior of Bitcoin because he's funded so much of this development. But nChain, of course, is doing most of the actual development of the software to make this happen. So anyway, from the perspective of MoneyButton, we're getting ready to scale because, you know, our MoneyButton itself is growing. The BitcoinSV ecosystem is growing. One of the things we're doing next week is the wallet workshop. And basically, as far as I'm concerned, the top goal of the wallet workshop next week is to make sure that our wallets can scale. Make sure that when the blocks get bigger, that everybody's wallet software keeps working, because not everyone wrote wallet software in such a way that you could just go from 1 megabyte to a gigabyte size blocks. So yeah, when it comes to MetaNet specifically, I can't talk about the protocol, but I can talk about, just because that's their thing, and to be honest, I haven't yet read the MetaNet white paper, so I don't want to try and comment on their specific protocol. But I can speak about sort of this overarching idea, which is that basically when you try to solve a bunch of related problems around things like money, financial instruments, legal contracts, and identity, you need one common protocol for all of these things, and it's really the only way to make any sense out of solving any of these things. So many of these other coins, like Facebook's do Libra, they clearly don't quite understand how to solve these things because they made just the currency part of it, and they didn't really think through all of these other pieces.
So I've heard that you don't mind Libra, Libra minds you.
Sounds accurate. So, yeah, so I mean, I think from the perspective, I mean, MetaNet is basically a better internet, is the way that I look at it. It solves a bunch of related problems that Craig had in mind since the very beginning. If you look at the stuff he's been writing on his blog and all that stuff, it really goes back quite a long ways. And it's not just Craig, there are a lot of people thinking about similar ideas, but it took someone to just basically research it and go against the sort of brain of all these people thinking that everything on the internet has to be free and stuff like that, and basically solving it correctly. And it took 10 years to figure out all the pieces, but it happened, and that was 10 years ago, and now we're 10 years into it, and finally we're starting to scale. So it's looking pretty good right now.
I'd say this summer, looking forward a little bit, this summer should be quite interesting. You know, within a few months, we should have the 2 gigabyte soon.
That is my understanding. So what they're going to do is raise the
Yay!
That's how, thank you. Yes.
Round of applause, everyone. Big blocks are best.
Technically, it was like 127.9 or something like that, because of course, 128 is the cap. So I got as close as you possibly could by just swiping MoneyButton as fast as I could. So that's literally, I say it, I did that myself because I literally sat there for like 2 hours swiping MoneyButton as fast as I could. And I say it that way because that shows you how easy it is to fill large blocks. So the point is, if one person sitting there who just swipes MoneyButton over and over and over again can fill up the current maximum block size, we really do need to get to much bigger blocks. Yeah. So, I mean, that was just an experiment. I bet I could do it, and I did. I mean, I didn't do it by myself. The MoneyButton team built the software to do it, but I did single-handedly swipe it myself to get up to that large of block size. So 2 gigabytes is not that big when you're ultimately replacing the entire internet.
So just a bit of context there. So with a 2 gigabyte block, gentlemen, people are going to be putting movies, you know.
One of the key things about having larger block size is encryption. When you upload things, it uploads at a certain size, but when you encrypt things, it increases the size. So with larger block size, we can start encrypting music and sound and such on the chain. Who's here has seen Audio B? Anyone? Yeah, right. That is partially, they use MoneyButton, he does, but the music is stored on a server. The thing is, though, what is interesting and key is that when you buy a record, it remembers your signature. So you can go back to that, and that is yours forever. In 50 years' time, your children could go and listen to that song. You bought it. But it's not on-chain. What we need is the larger block so everything can go on-chain, and that signature, when you buy it, is recorded to you forever, eternity. That's your song. That's not just for music, that could be for anything. You can make a photo album of your family, like you want to pass down to your children, that you don't want to sell, but you want to encrypt it, and then you just pass on the password.
And am I right in thinking, gentlemen, that rather than, say, Netflix, who's got 10 copies of a file all the way around the internet on many servers, we're able to just upload one file onto BitcoinSV, and then just, you know, you're pointing to that and downloading from that.
Distribution, production and distribution.
So the distribution of music, content, should I say.
The distribution of a lot of things changes. Gaming, music, art. If you imagine the online gaming industry, all you need is one game on-chain, and then it can be distributed globally. Anyone with access can play it. And there's no limits. Music-wise, same thing with the encryption and such, identity tied in. And when you have the copyright, and you as a musician, you've uploaded that first, and the timestamp is there. That is your legal backing. It protects you. And
any comments on the distribution of content on SV?
Sure. So I gave a talk on DRM on the blockchain at the CoinGeek conference, and the basic idea is that, like I was saying earlier, when you start trying to solve anything related to money, financial instruments, legal contracts, data, information, you need one common protocol, and Bitcoin was correctly designed from the beginning to do them all. And the way I look at it is basically, I'm pretty sure long term, if we were successful, the end game is that basically every type of information that has value would probably be on-chain. Because if you want to do things like distribute a movie globally, so long as people build this network, it can work that way, and it gives you all these desirable properties you want. Like, well, for what, it'll actually be cheaper to store data this way, because it's like having an internet that is a CDN. So all the information is actually stored more efficiently because everything's addressed by hash. Everything has built-in money and contracts. So you can do things like license the movie and have people, sort of pay to stream the movie. And you can even, if you think about through how this will actually work, ultimately, every type of information, movies, video games, and so on, you'll actually use contracts to create the movie and the video game and things like that, and then the end product will be on chain too. So not only will you have like a movie on chain, but everything involved in producing the movie will also be on chain as well. Just because it's ultimately going to be more efficient. It sounds silly to people now because they're basically confused by the Bitcoin Core people saying that everybody has to run full node. But when you realize that what it really is it's an economy, and there's a protocol, and you're going to have specialization just like you do in the real world. Here at this bar, it's not like they produce all the alcohol. They clearly buy alcoholic beverages from a number of different brands. You can see the brands listed there, who made the lights, who built the place, and so on. And it's built by a bunch of different businesses that specialize to produce everything. And when you realize that's how Bitcoin scales. So inside, it will be doing the same exact thing. There will be businesses that operate, sort of specialized hardware for bits and pieces of this stuff, and specialized software and so on. And you're ultimately going to have all these things on chain. So this is how you solve things like the contract involved in like licensing the movie, for watching it, for distributing it, and so on. And everyone will ultimately win.
On top of that, there's a lot of talk about, there's a lot of high-end talk. Over the last years, there's been a lot of scaling talk. A lot of Bitcoin scaling talk. The last 10 years have been stalled, so to speak. The last 7 or 8 months since last November, we've started putting things back together. But a key important thing I hope everyone does take away from this and keep in mind is that you do not have to be a programmer to build something. You can just build partners. You do not have to be a business mind. You could be someone, a musician, who has an idea, and then you need to make the friends who have business minds and who knows the programmer. And a lot of things, especially Ryan and his team, they brought it to such a level where if you find someone who can do basic HTML, you'll just copy paste, and then they can get things working. Really,
I can do copy paste.
Copy paste is easy. But yeah,
we'll come to more about the arts in a bit. But so let's just bring that back. So there's a big message there, I think, ladies and gentlemen, which is the build, isn't it? Build. And I think that's a very refreshing, reoccurring theme within SV.
I'm going to add something slightly.
Please.
I see it that way, but I think there's an extra component I think is really important that distinguishes what we're doing from the entire rest of the cryptocurrency industry, which is you're not just building stuff, you should build a business. Yeah. And what businesses do is they earn money, and they earn more money than they spend, basically.
That's called good business as well.
It's a very basic thing, right? I mean, but at the same time, this is exactly what basically the entire rest of the cryptocurrency world didn't do. They all took this sort of weird, well, we're just going to raise money and think that is the thing that we're doing. But this is what they all did. So what we're now doing with MoneyButton is we're actually, I'm pretty sure, quite far ahead of all of Silicon Valley. Because all these other, and I'm talking about not just companies like Facebook and Google that are based in Silicon Valley, but also the cryptocurrency companies that are based there. When I look around in sort of that region, they're all sort of off the mark. Many of these people did ICOs, and they never really did something that actually solved a real problem for real people. Many of these businesses, if they have a real business, basically serviced the ICO and token industry rather than solving real problems. No one solved DRM using any of these other cryptocurrencies. Look at projects like IPFS and Filecoin, things like that. So they're Silicon Valley. Tons of projects like this where they never actually did it because they didn't understand what they were getting into. But what they really did was, because the environment leading up to 2017 was so absurdly good for raising money, all they really did was raise lots of money. They didn't do anything that mattered, really. So if you and that matters because they won't ultimately succeed. Even if you raise $200 million, like Filecoin did, or however much they raised, they're never going to do it because they're sort of so off the mark. You can still, as a much smaller business, create a real, growing, lasting business and ultimately beat Filecoin and IPFS or whatever all these other tokens are if you just build a real business, because that's what's actually going to work.
Build it on BitcoinSV.
Do it in a way that works, and I think if you aren't already convinced that it's BitcoinSV, you can learn that the hard way, but yes, BitcoinSV.
Any comments there, Joe?
Yes, and use the MetaNet. Start learning about what it's about, how you can websites is a perfect example. We're going to get onto that more this year. But websites on the MetaNet, when you're storing a website and you're not paying hosting and domain costs, you're already saving money. When you start creating that website and it is made from stored images, which are also stored on transactions and stored music files and whatever else you're using to make your website, if that's pulling from various elements of the MetaNet, which is where other people or yourself have uploaded content, and then you are saving money. You're saving money here, saving money there. As Ryan was just saying, a lot of people, and this, well, not just people, had it all wrong about raising money. They just raised money. They didn't realise, the way to make money is to use it. You use it and you make savings, and you use it and you make efficiency, and you make a business, and that's how you profit.
And I think there's a real fantastic message as well, because by building businesses and building projects, whether you're an artist, a particular musician, I say artist and musician, so that's from my context, I'm not a developer, but I really want to tonight that people are inspired. Is there any questions from the audience based on what the gentlemen have been saying? And we can pass the microphone over and you're more welcome to fire a question. Sam, are we able to get the magic microphone over to that gentleman in the back? Just press the red button for a second. But we do want to inspire people, and we want people to build those businesses, to fill up that block size.
So yeah, for all of tonight, we will be doing a lot of networking. The whole focus isn't really us stood up here. The focus is you guys. Yeah, good.
Who wanted the question? Go on. That's it. Any more hands up after that, gentleman, as well? Feel free to fire away.
Might not be working.
We like questions. What's the largest mammal in the world? Does anyone know that question? Blue whale. Hey!
Okay, thanks, Rocky.
Go for it.
Yeah, thanks. I just had a quick question. How would a big company like Sky use BitcoinSV?
Subscriptions?
It's a great question.
Okay, so what is Sky?
Sky News, like Sky TV.
Okay,
Sky TV?
You do with Sky TV?
No, I don't watch TV. That sounds like a rubbish show.
Okay, it's a I'll give it a brief. It's a TV, regular TV, Sky TV. Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, so a lot of ways. So ultimately, first of all, I mean, solve a real problem, right? Like Sky TV is not going to do this out of ideology. I mean, they're not going to do it because they want to bring about anarchy or something like that, right? The Sky TV is only going to do this because it actually solves an actual problem for them. So it's going to need to either allow them to earn more money or save them money or something of the sort, basically. So what you can do is you look at this holistically. Look at solving all these problems related to identity, money, financial contracts, and data and information, all this stuff. What they're going to want to do is they're probably going to be able to distribute their content better, for one. They're going to be able to come up with things like the contracts and licensing, things like that, can be tracked automatically. They can pay people automatically. You can do things like the people that produce the film can be paid as people are watching it, things like that. You can do streaming, watching the television. You can pay for it as you go, or you can have any sort of you can do subscriptions and things like that. I mean, all these types of things are possible. But I would say for something like a company like that, with MoneyButton, we're very much more ground up. So we're a little bit different than nChain is a little bit more top down. They're a little bit more like looking at it from how do we go directly towards big businesses. We're looking more at startup companies. So we look more at how can MetaNet.icu and Uptime.SV and whoever else, all these other projects. How can small projects use MoneyButton? So we're not pitching MoneyButton to any of these giant companies yet. I think it'll take a while before we roll out the software. And I think between companies like nChain from the top down, us from the bottom down, or bottom up, we'll meet in the middle somewhere and be able to solve it for Sky.
If I may as well, on top of the streaming and subscription models, which Netflix could save money from, it's also the receipt functions as well. If I was to approach a big business as Sky TV, I would have a look at what their expenses are, see how much they're spending on receipts, on paying people, their own staff, on doing their accounts, their taxation, paying auditors and whatnot. That's a lot of money. All of that, automatic taxation can be done on chain.
That's a big thing as well. Tax.
Let's talk about that for a second.
Wait, should we have a 5-minute tax chat?
Yeah, let's do it because
Right,
this is such
a bit of context, because tax is almost a nasty word to the libertarians, right? But let's reframe it.
Let me just highlight the difference between tax avoidance and tax evasion. Well, tax avoidance is when you legally do it. It's like, say, Starbucks sells all their goods and all their coffees in England, but sends all their profit to their Irish partnership. And they say, oh, that's because it's expensive. You know, so in England, we actually make £1 profit. That's Starbucks. So they pay tax on £1 profit. And then their Irish firm pays the tax there, which is much, much lower. And isn't Starbucks that only does this? That's tax avoidance. Tax evasion, yeah, all of them. Tax evasion is when you're doing it illegally and you're just not paying the tax and you're trying to like shuffle it off to like an island somewhere. And also, interestingly enough, the very richest people, they are quite good at doing tax evasion because of having access to banks,
offshore
accounts and whatnot. What point of sale, tax at point of sale will do is enable you as a customer, say if you're buying something from me, it enables you to pay the tax straight off. Because you're going to be paying the tax anyway. If you're going to buy a £20 item of me, you're going to pay £20. It's me as a business who later will go, oh yeah, I've got to pay tax on that, or I could try and shuffle it off like Starbucks does. But if you are deciding to pay tax as you buy the item, then it goes straight to the tax office, and that's done. And if you can imagine like a country like England with Starbucks and Tesco's and various other things, the amount of tax which actually is legally avoided is a lot. And if all of that tax was actually back in the country, and then people might find that the actual overall tax might lower, because there'll be a surplus. There will be a massive surplus of tax.
Ryan, would you like to add to the...
Yeah, so I'll just say, I'll create some context for why this is sort of important. It's one of those things where you talk with like a normal business and there's nothing controversial or unusual about this, but you talk about this in the cryptocurrency world and somehow people are shocked that you're going to pay taxes. But if you do a real business...
Oh my God!
I know, like, well, but of course, if you have a real business and you have employees and things like that, you don't have a choice, you're going to pay taxes. And if you're solving problems for real people, that's going to involve paying taxes. Now, like as Joel was saying, if you want to avoid paying taxes, well, who doesn't? If you do it legally and so on, no one wants to pay more taxes than they actually have to. But at the same time, if you're operating a business, you do want to be sure that you're doing it correctly and that you can do accounting correctly and report things correctly so that you don't have a problem with the government. So it's a totally normal thing that every real business does, unless they're really small and asking for trouble. But if you're any sizable business at all, of course you do this correctly and you do proper accounting and proper tax filing and all this stuff. So anyway, I just want to say, because I created controversy on Twitter recently I said something like, I said like, we're going to help governments collect taxes. And
that was a great comment.
Yeah, just flat.
Accountability!
Yeah.
You like that?
Now, I will admit, when I said this, I knew I was going to piss off the whole cryptocurrency world, which is exactly what happened.
Trolls.
So all I did was I said this on my own Twitter feed. But what happens is, because Twitter is so gamed and manipulated, the trolls take my tweet and then troll other trolls with the tweet. So I just posted on my own feed, but it pissed off everybody, because the trolls were on going, hey, can you believe this? They're going to be paying taxes. Well, no. So anyway, I basically, I mean, shortly thereafter, people were telling me this was the most controversial tweet I've seen in 6 months. I'm like, oh my God, all I said was something so basic. Any other industry, there would not be something weird about it. But anyway, yeah, so I mean, no one likes paying taxes, or you feel like you're forced to do these things, but it's just realistic. That's just how it is. And if you want to lower taxes, then do that. And I'll just say that from a libertarian perspective, there is a totally realistic way to do this, which is basically you can do things like operate parts or all of your business in different countries and things like that perfectly legally and not have an issue. So lots of companies do things like that. Like Craig was recently talking about how companies like Facebook and so on are actually largely operated out of Ireland because the taxes are cheaper in Ireland. Okay, well, you can do that, and that's perfectly legal. And there's actually debates going on. And, I think the EU is somewhat angry that Ireland is charging these people less taxes. But they are, as far as they're aware, doing it legally and so on. So anyway, this is just, you can tell how silly some of the people in the cryptocurrency world are that they think there's something controversial about this. But it's not. This is just, if you have real businesses, there's nothing questionable or controversial about any of this stuff. We're just being realistic.
Also, the fact that when you're actually getting taxed at point of sale, all your tax is going straight to the tax office, or it's going to a business which is sorting for you.
Let's get feedback from one of these ones. But I think there's actually a great narrative that's threaded through, and it's accountability and illumination. And when when you say that there's more tax being paid legitimately and at point of sale, these new tax payment processes that are being, well, almost can come into fruition through the advent of BitcoinSV. I think that's an incredible innovation, and that's part of the more fairer system that this Bitcoin system brings, and the kind of hypocrisy of the crypto scene. Just bringing it back to context, at the moment we've had this pump in the crypto scene, this speculative price pump, don't know what's carrying out, but it's not utility. And one of the refreshing things about SV is that it's about accountability and illumination. As Dr. Craig Wright, as many other people in the space say, that these new processes that can be built. So when our gentleman mentions about how Sky can use it, whether it's subscriptions, whether it's pay-per-view, whether it's using blockchain, the SV blockchain within their internal systems itself, there's so much accountability, illumination, and fairness that this Bitcoin system brings.
I will throw in one of the key points of Bitcoin and MetaNet is anti-corruption. But one of the very key elements, because of that anti-corruption element, there's so much corruption in the world in general, and a lot of it is made possible because of the traditional financial system. There's a lot of anonymous elements in the traditional financial system which allows this to happen. When corruption happens, it tends to cause governments to grow bigger. It also tends for tax to start getting inflated beyond what it should be like, because there's money leaking. There's money leaking from different governments through anonymous things. They might be going for things which don't really mean much, like some MPs buying a house. This happened in England a lot. MPs buying houses. Yeah,
it was a duck house. Because everyone needs a duck house,
from
don't
tax
they?
money. They buy their wife a house, their house servant a house, and they're crazy. And if you could actually follow the money trail, you'd be able to go, hey, wait a second. So the anti-corruption element brings down government and brings a better politician. If you are a politician and you are using, well, we'll have to mention voting. So, we'll go to voting in a second, but if you are a politician and you're using a system like BitcoinSV and the MetaNet, in combination, you will be able to show that you are legit. You will be able to show that your spending, your government party, your political party, and your intentions are all viewable. And also the voting as well. You'll be able to show that the voting. I mean, Ryan's already practiced with some voting systems with MoneyButton, and they're brilliant. They work amazingly. And when you have signatures and PayMail, advanced PayMail signatures attached to voting systems, and then you can't cheat the voting systems anymore. And that should be interesting.
That would be incredible. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, so but let me start with the corruption thing first of all, because it goes back into this sort of tax thing. So why do we want to help governments collect taxes? It sounds absurd to anybody who doesn't want to pay taxes. But if you think about this from a realistic perspective, if you want to actually lower taxes, this is actually the best way to do it. Because as you help them, we want to help everybody. We want everybody using Bitcoin, including people in government. We want to help them collect taxes because, well, first of all, we're helping them, like we help everybody, but secondly, it's going to force transparency and accountability inside government. You're going to be able to watch where does the tax money go. So if you're being realistic about it, this is the best way to do it. If you just don't pay taxes, you're just going to be taken down. You're going to be like all these Binance or something like that, where they just have to shut off the US and things like that. If you just avoid taxes and regulations and things like that, you're just asking for trouble. But if you do it in a smart way, you do want to help governments collect taxes. It's like I wouldn't sort of normally say it this way, but just to pitch it to the sort of the cryptocurrency world, it is like a Trojan horse. It will take quite some time, but we will force accountability and transparency in government that way. So this is a good thing, and even if you want lower taxes, this is the best way to do it. Okay.
One of the best ways to show and expand upon what Ryan's saying is to build businesses. And to show by building and by example. We can say, I mean, I'm doing it myself, I will be using various systems which are being made, but as the years go by and you make your own businesses or join with other people and make projects, you yourself can show how accountable your businesses are and the efficiency that it's doing. And when you get contacted by bigger businesses, or you have government agents go, oh, wait a second, how are you sorting out your tax in your business and stuff? Then you can show them. You know, and that's a key thing I really want people to take from this and further MetaNet events. Question?
Joe and I were talking about this earlier. Is there any...
Thank you. Is there any current integration between existing fiat point-of-sale systems and crypto wallets, so the tax, and going back to tax, that can be split off at point-of-sale?
As we were discussing earlier, it can already be done with multiple outputs in MoneyButton or other software. I use MoneyButton because it's just really easy.
So for organisations that are taking both fiat and crypto, and coffee shop.
I'm not going to give too much away, but it is a business waiting to happen. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll give this away.
Make it.
Right, there's quite a few businesses in my head waiting to happen, and I've already taken a few. But one of them waiting to happen is a tax business, where you as a business take tax money from other cryptocurrency businesses who are doing their point of sale tax thing. They pay you for the service, and you pay their tax in fiat to wherever it needs to be paid. For the business, which needs to sort out its tax, it's basically they're sending the money to the tax office, but they're not because tax offices aren't accepting Bitcoin yet. Until that happens, there needs to be businesses sat in the middle.
It needs to be seamless for the merchant
Yes.
to receive a payment in cryptocurrency, and for there to be no back-end reconciliation between what's product price, what's taxation, what
We're
products
almost
are
waiting for
taxable.
someone to build that.
So, for example, say if anyone here built a business, like I've just explained, with tax, you will accept taxation money and you sort out the taxation. So all I do as the MetaNetICU, I add in a 20% output for my tax, and whenever anyone pays a membership, 20% goes off to his business, because he's sorting out my tax, and that's it, I don't even bother with anything. At the end of the year, I hope my tax is sorted out and I pay him whatever fee he's charging for his service.
And that's a more efficient process that, again, Bitcoin's innovated on.
I mean,
That's how.
then I don't, there's anyone who's had to deal with accountants, some of you who had to deal with dodgy accountants, you might find that they charge you a lot of money. They charge you a lot of money. And any business which places itself in between cryptocurrency businesses and the tax office in this stage, you can undercut all the accountants that exist. You can just go, how much do they charge? Right, I'll do 50% of them.
That's the real opportunity here, isn't it, people? That there's the real chance to make these, just like this gentleman said, the real chance to make these opportunities, these businesses that can undercut the businesses and streamline. And this is how Bitcoin, not just as a currency, a medium of exchange, but as a kind of system, can change. Let's turn this microphone down. I think this one's
It's up. It's close to you, man.
Closer to my mouth, they're very wet, huh?
So yeah, I think this is the true innovation of Bitcoin. So any artists out there, any people, business people, anyone that's thinking about these ideas need to be put into action. Just like you said, there's a phenomenal opportunity. Even Saul Goodman can't compete with BitcoinSV. It's just too efficient.
And a key thing as well, I mean, we're going to have people talking to us, understandably, but talk to each other as well, find each other's strengths.
Yes.
Yeah.
Shall we have a break then, ladies and gentlemen? Oh, we've got a question. Let's have a couple.
Right, any questions before we have a break? Go on.
Shall I just shout?
Yeah.
Shout.
No, don't shout. Don't shout. We've got a camera recording this in the back.
Can you hear me? Yeah, you can. Okay. It's a technical question for Ryan, actually. I've got a business, it's a printing business, and we do online sales. If I wanted to integrate MoneyButton, can I get it to pass a variable amount to the MoneyButton, or do I have to hard code it with a number?
You can pass in a variable amount. So we support every fiat currency.
Yeah.
Under the hood, everything is BitcoinSV, but you pick your own currency and you can pass in anything. So if you accept British pounds, you pass in 7 GBP or whatever it is into the button. And so that's already built in. And so the user sees whatever currency they prefer. So I'm from the US, so I prefer the US dollar. So you charge GBP. Well, this is exactly how it works with MetaNet. So MetaNet.icu, Joel charges in pounds, but I see the dollar amount, which is how it should be. If you visit another country, you read the menu at a restaurant. So I have no idea how much any of this is. You should see it in the amount of money that the end user prefers. But the merchant should be able to charge in whatever they prefer. So that's exactly how MoneyButton works.
So it already works. Okay, I will go and look at it properly this time. And can I just say, Ryan, I feel like you're going to be like the next Jeff Bezos or something. And I honestly do.
So we will be the next Amazon.
Well, yeah, I mean, seriously, I think, it's lovely to meet you. Thank you for coming.
Well, thank you very much.
Next question.
And I just wondered how you would approach the betting industry, because they're notorious for having money laundered. So how would you approach that?
Oracles.
Well, you know, like sky betting with horse racing and dog racing, etc. Where you've got races going off all around the world, all at the same time, but there's a massive amount of money laundering.
That will be oracles and tokens, but there's still going to be things to combat. But with oracles and tokens, you will be able to have bets go off, and the oracles, I won't go into them now.
Well, what is an oracle roughly? 2 seconds.
An oracle is like a program which basically sits on the side and watches for trigger events to happen. So if it's watching the race, you can have 10 oracles set up, and they will watch the race, and when the race finishes, the oracle will say that person won, and so on. And what you would do is build a betting program which says when 7 of 10 oracles agree, pay out the winner or winners. So which first 7 oracles agree and send you the information, they can also receive payment back. So it's an incentive for them to send you the correct result. And it's got to be 7 of 10 agreeing, not falsifying and such. With the whole tracing of money, and with money laundering, what the key thing there is using signatures and identity. When people are using advanced forms of PayNow with MoneyButton and identity tied in and they're making bets, and even if they're making large bets, it can all be accounted for and seen through. When like £1 million goes through a bookie and they have the tax agent saying, who did that come from? They can say, oh look, Joel Dalais, he signed that one, he paid for that one, straight off. And it's all visible on the blockchain forever.
Yeah, like that. Next question, was it? Gentleman down there?
Sorry, more of a statement. I'm Irish, so yeah, our taxes are advantageous, but that's capitalism for the moment. But on the other side of it, the government is building a hospital for the last few years, and it's about to cost 1.7 billion because of overruns, and that's the sort of corruption I think that Bitcoin could possibly get rid of, because the UAE built the tallest building in the world for 1.7 billion, but we're building an average-sized hospital for children.
If you have parties, political parties, trying to get into power, and they're working on Bitcoin, on the blockchain, and they say, look, you see all our accountability, and then other political parties, if they start saying, well, we're not going to use it because we want to hide what we're actually doing, then it's more likely that the honest political party is going to get into power. So it's not so much that the corrupt ones will go, oh, we're just going to adopt it so you can see all we're doing. It's going to take time, and it's going to take explanation and education to the legit politicians and political parties, saying this is the tool of light that you can use against the corruption which makes the world a messy place.
Any more questions, ladies and gentlemen?
I do a comment on what you just said. I think there's so many people.
Please say in the microphone there, from the top.
Hello.
Oh, hola.
I agree with what you just said, and I think it's on the people to demand that kind of clarity on governments. So it's gonna happen when the people start demanding that they do things right.
Absolutely. And that's the clarity and accountability and illumination that Bitcoin offers. We've got a question at the back there. Is that?
Hi. I want to ask you what's the current solutions or ideas or your opinion regarding since the blockchain is immutable, right now that's a great power, but it also has its own problems for uploading illegal material or maybe mistakes, private information that there shouldn't be. Current ideas for solving, correcting that, possible solutions or something.
So yeah, I'll come into this. So this is relevant. So you sort of a two-part question. I mean, one is the illegal material, the other is like mistakes. So let's cover illegal material first. So this happened as soon as Steve basically told everyone, "Hey guys, set this command line option to increase the return size," and people did it. People like ourselves and Unwriter went out there and immediately created tooling that allowed people to start doing things like this. And of course, there's some person out there who's a troll who posted illegal content. I won't say what it is. If you don't already know, you can guess what is the worst possible type of content you can imagine somebody could put on the blockchain. Somebody did it. So what we did was, well, first of all, we're all businesses. So the blockchain is a protocol, or sorry, I should say Bitcoin is a protocol that doesn't change. But it's operated by businesses. So what are we going to do? Well, if we're a part of something like this, well, we don't want to be part of anything like that. So we didn't have IP logging at the time. We added IP logging. They did it again, and then we reported it. Because we're a business. So what's going to happen is when you realize all this stuff is stored permanently and immutably and you're signing it, it's the stupidest way to share something illegal because it's the most traceable system ever. So contrary to what all these other people in the cryptocurrency world think, but Bitcoin was designed that way from the beginning. It's bad for crime and it's good for transparency and accountability. So, and of course, they're not going to keep doing it because no one did it as a business. It's not like someone is selling illegal material because they know how stupid that would be. They did it because they were a troll, and they just wanted to make BitcoinSV look bad. But it doesn't make us look bad. It actually makes us look completely legit in the eyes of everyone else. So as soon as this happened, we identified the user, we banned them. We wrote a blog post saying why we're doing this, that of course we're going to ban this type of material and report people like this. And we were linked from the BBC, because the BBC did an article on this and linked to MoneyButton. So we actually look better in the eyes of 99.9% of the world who doesn't want that type of material, around. So, it actually made us look better in the eyes of everyone that actually mattered. And the only people that thought it was bad were people that are idiotic.
Trolls that couldn't do it again. That's what they thought it was bad.
No questions?
Good evening, my name is Osmond Callis. I'm the Business Development Manager at nChain, and I'm wondering what your vision for Bitcoin is individually. Thank you.
It's a good question, isn't it? 10 out of 10 for that question there. Well, my vision, as a musician and artist, would be a platform in which I could share music and get paid directly. A system in which I could collaborate with other musicians and make music in real time. A system where I could potentially make video content in real time with other musicians. I would like to see BitcoinSV as a system used in the systems of every business that I've ever interacted with as a consumer. So from a coffee shop all the way to the bar, but that's just my over-ambitious ambitions. Right.
I will be happy when we get to the point of automata running and AI, simple AI. But when we get automata running on chain, which is buying, selling content for users, because all this talk of machines living for themselves, that's crap. I can swear today.
You can swear.
It's
Come on.
crap. Right. Basically, it's symbiotic. You've always got to create something which will make you profit as a human. So I will be very happy when people are making automatic programs which are returning a profit, will still need human interaction and simple AIs.
So do you mean like a fridge ordering milk or?
Yeah, things like that. Tokenization, tokens used properly in the token script language, used a bit properly, and automata, things like the fridge. The fridge runs out of milk, the fridge beeps and goes, I've ordered you more milk. automatically, because someone here has made a business which accepts the tokens from a fridge when you need milk ordering. And then you as a business orders milk. And then I get milk delivered the next day without even needing to buy it.
What happens if it's low fat? I didn't ask for that.
I mean, I would
Sorry.
With Brits would be like, oh, you're getting a bit tubby, mate. I'm like, who put a camera on my fridge?
Right. All right. So I'll give sort of two parts of this. So one is a better internet, which is sort of how I think what MetaNet is. And I won't go into this one in detail because it could get super technical, but just these ideas of things like the internet becomes a better CDN, it becomes a better data storage system, it becomes a better data computation system, it's more efficient. You can have fewer copies of things. Not only do you not have to replicate everything on everybody's computer, you can actually have fewer copies of stuff because you have one authentic copy of some things that are provably correct. So you can have, for giant pieces of data or things that are illegal or something like that, maybe there's actually only one copy of it anywhere. So it's actually more efficient than the internet. But I would go bigger than that, because that's a very technical way of looking at it. I think the better way of looking at it is that it actually helps everything in the economy. So in the same way that we're adopting the internet sort of more and more, it's involved in normal people, it's involved in businesses, it's involved in governments. The same thing will happen with Bitcoin, where it sort of is involved in everything going on in the economy. Because when you combine things like not just money, but also contracts and information and identity, well, that's just about everything, actually. You can start to solve all these problems that we deal with in the real world economy. So basically anything that you do that involves interacting with other people in some type of formal way will involve Bitcoin. So it's a very, very grand vision ultimately. And the only reason why I see that, basically, we do have to actually make it happen. There are all these various forces that are trying to seem to prevent it from happening. But I do think the incentives encourage it from happening. I think it's a good idea. And the only way I see, I could see it maybe hundreds of years from now, who knows what's going to happen. But between now and then, that's how I see it. It will ultimately be like the base layer of the economy because it's so useful for everything related to economics.
I think we're going to take a break now for half an hour and networking. One more question? Go on, one more question.
It was to do with the IP tracking. Oh, there we go.
Ask your question again, my friend.
It was to do with the IP tracking. I was going to ask if you store, is that going to block you? But I remember what Craig said before, you can't block yourself with Tor, so I just answered the wrong question. So everything is going to be trackable through the IP.
Yeah, Tor's a bit of a lie with the whole anonymous stuff. If people control enough enter nodes, then you can be tracked with Tor. So,
My 5. Well, that trackability. So that's quite interesting.
It will still be a case of, say, if you are uploading content and someone's going through Tor trying to upload it themselves and say, hey, this is mine, and such, they will still be uploading it with their signature. Or if they're trying to upload it without their signature and such, but it's still going to be traceable to them because the signatures inbuilt to BitcoinSV can be tracked. We're just making it a lot easier with identity measures and payment. So as a human being, yeah, through MoneyButton. But I will say, MoneyButton's years ahead of the game. But other services can build on the Paymail. Paymail is open to all domains. You can do many, many things, not just identity things. Just use your imagination, and I don't want to give it all away. Because if I tell you, hey, you can do this and that, and then you build something, and then you stop, and you'll be like, what do I do next? So you need to inspire yourself and meet other people. Right.
Brilliant. I think that's the start of finish of our first part. Let's have half an hour drinkies and networking. And then we'll reconvene at 8:15. So, round of applause for the chaps. What a phenomenal first half that was. That was wonderful to hear the comments. Phenomenal chats. There we go. And can we take a seat, beautiful people? That's it. Take a seat. The people at the bar, you may want to come and take a seat.
Come and sit down, everyone.
Dagon, stop talking. Such a charmer. Ruth, I can't believe you made it. Great. Hey, did it? Hey. I know, you come a long way just for me. Just for Ryan. So did I. So did Joel. Round of applause, everyone. Come on, part two. Come on, come and take a seat. That's it. Come on, ladies and gentlemen. Dagon, winner of this year's best looking guy in crypto. Too late, he's married. No, in all genuineness, it's so important that with this first kind of event, the MetaNet event, and a phenomenal chance to have this very intimate conversation. See, look, love the BSV chap. I'm all in BSV, he says. Mr. Dentacoin, come on over. You will be converted. So let me pass this microphone to you. Is this one working? Why didn't you tell us what was going to happen, Joel?
Greetings again, everyone. We're going to have a bit more of a talking session with Owen here leading. Owen from nChain will be talking about the MetaNet and MetaNet protocol. After around 30 minutes of talking, we're going to be doing a bit of Q&A, and then we're going to be stopping with talking and with recording and allowing everyone to eat some more and to drink. And we'll have around 40-50 minutes of just eating and drinking and networking. And then around 10 o'clock we will be putting on the music and clearing up the chairs a bit.
For the dancing. Yay! So, without further ado,
over to Owen, who's going to talk about the MetaNet protocol.
Yeah. Okay. Can everyone hear me? Yeah. Cool. Okay. So it's a bit later in the evening. Everyone's had a few more drinks, so I think it's time we have a very technical discussion. Before I forget, I do want to mention that nChain are hiring at the moment for all kinds of roles. So if you're interested in career roles, please check out the website. Okay, so I'm going to talk a bit more about the MetaNet protocol. So I think now the word MetaNet has come to encapsulate the whole ecosystem and system of ideas. But originally it meant something quite specific. So a little less than a year ago, my team were given a brief to try and imagine and propose in a very concrete way a protocol for structuring an on-chain internet. And this I had the privilege of working on myself with my nChain colleagues Craig Wright and also Jack Davis, who gave an excellent talk at Pointy Conference. That if you want more detail, I'll happily refer to, and another colleague called Chloe Tartan. And we struggled for a while in thinking about, okay, we can put data in what return, how do we relate it to one another. And eventually we thought, what are we actually trying to achieve? What is the internet to your average end user? So your average person will understand you can type in an address, such as ebay.com, and you'll be directed to their homepage. And that will have, from that, you'll have subdomains like ebay.com /UK, for example, USA or Germany or something like that. And from that, you'll have further subdomains. So in our minds, we try to understand this and how would we formulate that concretely, and we imagined a tree structure. So at the root of the tree would be ebay.com. That would then point towards two different options, so ebay.com /UK /Germany, and from then further subdomains, so / I don't know, electronics. And this is how we abstractly imagined the domain-like structure of the internet. So we went about trying to think, how could we reconstruct that on-chain, what would that look like, and does that make sense? And that is the kind of birth of the MetaNet as we know it. So what are the key components of this tree? So mathematically speaking, you'd call that a directed acyclic graph. So in maths, the graph is a collection of nodes and edges. The fact that it's acyclic means edges always point one way, and the fact that it's directed also means you can't have a self-referential aspects of the graph. And there are several advantages of thinking of on-chain data in this way. So if you just imagine op return at the moment, even if you put your favorite prefix in front of it, MetaNet prefix, E protocol, if and when there's a huge amount of data on chain with all these different transactions, it would be very difficult to search for exactly what we're looking for. Because if we're looking for every transaction, every op return, every flag, pretty soon we're going to get to a huge search space. So one thing a tree-like structure allows you to do is to uniquely identify not a particular transaction or data point, but a tree. And there might be far fewer trees, kind of human digestible amount, that you can then try and apply a search function to. It's like, imagine your favourite websites, okay, you can probably think less than 100. And it makes the job of mapping a human readable domain, eBay or Google, to a specific non-generable bit machine readable IP address for the internet, but for in the Bitcoin blockchain, transaction ID. Okay, so we set upon a tree-like structure, and what is a node in the tree? What is an edge? So the MetaNet is about structuring on-chain data. So each node represents the data packet, which will be contained in an op return. So a node corresponds specifically to a transaction containing the payload. How do we reference transactions? By their ID. This is the unique way for us to not only query the blockchain, but also we can store the data ourselves and prove inclusion. So we knew a node to have some reference to its transaction ID to locate data in the blockchain. What is the second aspect we need in the MetaNet tree? It is an edge, so a point from a directed arrow from one data packet to another. And the paradigm we chose upon was the signature. So in Bitcoin, we use signatures not only to represent addresses, but also the permission to do something. So to every node, we have to assign the permission to create a child node within this tree. And permissions are controlled by public-private key pairs, and the signature represents a concrete authentication from a parent node to a child node. So these are the minimum structure you need is two things: a public key, which represents the permission to do something, and a transaction ID, which actually locates and concretely specifies the data. So in our MetaNet tree, each node has a unique ID corresponding to a public key and a transaction ID. And this is I think, the most key concept of the MetaNet. And I think we're trying to follow the paradigm of Bitcoin in general. How do you convey the maximum amount of information within the minimal amount of data? It's crucial for the scaling. Imagine whilst maintaining a high level of security. Okay, so this allows us to concretely define a MetaNet tree. It doesn't have to be a tree-like structure of, say, a complex domain like Google. It could be completely linear. So a use case for that might be your Twitter feed. So I upload my tweet, and also I give myself permission to respond to that and respond to that in the next level below. And we follow the paradigms of Bitcoin outlined in the white paper, that we only use one public key per level of this tree. So each time we will create a new public key, but assign the appropriate permission. Because we understand that we can rotate public keys. We don't always fix one public key to one identity forever, but we record the history of those permissions. So I think those are the two kind of maximal aspects of the MetaNet graph. One is a complex tree like a website, and the other is more like my own permissions for Twitter.
Well, I'm just going to throw in, but it hasn't been mentioned much, but this is really applicable to legal constructions in courts of laws and giving permissions in contracts. This type of method will very likely eventually be used. So.
Sure. And one product or one feature that we wanted to enable with the MetaNet is marketplaces to emerge. So this is why I think eBay is a good example. It's an organization that wants to allow individual users to post to its domains. Right, so I might be a small business selling my products on eBay, or I might be a home user, and that is a valuable asset for eBay that they can sell. Perhaps they give it to home users for free, but if you want to be a registered reseller or something like that, you might want to. eBay might want a marketplace to for them to pay for permission to post on their domain, and this can be naturally achieved using public-private key pairs because they control access to something and can prove your ownership of that. So with the MetaNet-like structure, one interesting feature that emerges is I can essentially sell the right to post child node to my parent node, and I can try and leverage my reputation as a legitimate merchant. Similarly, I think something else that's quite topical for the Twitter example is, I think we're all familiar with, there's a fair amount of trolling out there, and we could enable scenarios where you pay to post to my Twitter feed, or you pay to reply, or something similar to that. So we want marketplaces to emerge, and we've seen a great precedence with MoneyButton and PayNow. Okay, so you not only create a product, but the way that you can, sustain itself after some.
Make it profitable.
Yeah, I mean, it's the key paradigm of Bitcoin that if you create economic incentives, what might seem like quite small marginal things can have a snowball effect into a huge ecosystem. Okay, so if we're talking now specifically about the protocol of the MetaNet, we've talked about a node has to contain a minimum of two things, a public key and a transaction ID, and it also has to specify what parent it's coming from, which again is a parent public key and a parent transaction ID. So there are four elements that you have to contain in a MetaNet transaction for it to be valid. This would help more with the diagram, but I think it's too complex to draw at the moment. But if you imagine a standard Bitcoin transaction, there are two things you get for free. You get the transaction ID of the node, this is the standard part of the Bitcoin transaction, and you also get a signature from the parent, which is the signature that appears in the input. So all that's left is to specify the remaining two pieces of information. One is the transaction ID of the parent, which will stick in a lock return, and the second is the public key of that node itself, which again will stick in a lock return. So we have a minimum of 4 bits of information we need. 2 of them we get for free, naturally in the Bitcoin transaction, and the other 2 we stick in lock return with a MetaNet prefix. And this is designed to accommodate any other protocol that can sit within it. So one that we've used is unwriter's B protocol, which is a way of encoding data that we put in a lock return, and that can follow immediately after the base MetaNet transactions. Okay, so I mentioned unwriter's B protocol, but I'm very pleased to announce this week that from some work with a couple of guys from nChain, so one is Simon, who was here today, is he still here? Simon? No, you might have that, yeah, there he is, at the back. And Liam, and they created a tool called the MetaWriter, which allows you to very easily construct transactions compatible with the MetaNet protocol. And at the same time, we see a new tool from Unwriter, which is called the MetaNet area graph, which allows it to easily parse that data and display it visually in the graph. So we're getting very close to a situation where it really is feasible that you have all the back-end components to piece this stuff together, and you just need to put a nice user face or front end. I think one thing that is missing that we've envisioned is a third party creating a database for keyword items that allow search functionality. So say you were trying to search for something on eBay, you would query that third party that would then give you the relevant transaction IDs that contain your MetaNet class.
I'm just going to give a brief example when you were just saying that. Crypto fights, who's heard of crypto fights? So you imagine that all the items, rare items and whatever else was on the MetaNet, and you wanted to do a search, and then you would use, if the item itself was contained on a node, and then you would use a search and you'd be able to find whatever you're looking for.
Okay, and the last thing I want to mention
that we envisage in the, let's say, version 1 of the MetaNet protocol is a versioning structure. So we talked about a MetaNet node having a public key, which we kind of interpret as its identity, although it's probably not that accurate for data structure, and its transaction ID. Suppose we want to update that. Suppose I want to post some code to a Git repository, and then I have a new commit. That will be interpreted as a node with the same public key, but a different transaction ID that will be naturally versioned by the block height. So we contain a natural kind of timestamping and an immutable history of the previous version of that website as well, which I think is particularly important in terms of addressing censorship issues and ownership of who's made changes. And that's really all I want to say for the base MetaNet protocol. I refer you to the technical specification if you want to hear more about that.
That's some pretty technical stuff, but can you perhaps give some live examples of its applications for any of us non-technical people out there? Because it sounds like so much incredible back-end stuff that's being developed at the moment to make this possible. You know, this MetaNet possible.
A couple of examples, as I mentioned about crypto fights, and as Owen was saying, with social platforms. With MetaNet, if you're giving permissions and such, then you can give people permission to talk to you, to PM you, send you a private message, but you can set the fee. So you can build your own troll wall, your own personal troll wall. So if there's, say, a social platform built on the MetaNet structure, and you're like, well, okay, I can set my fee to either PM me or just to talk on my wall. You can set various fees, depending on the business which is providing the service.
I'd say that a week ago today was the first recognized MetaNet transaction using the MetaWriter tool. So I can't comment on other live use cases right now, but perhaps I can mention what I envision the first use cases are. So I think things like websites that require participation or a wide distribution of users, something like eBay. Another one is GitHub, that have to interact with each other, possibly incorporating some type of marketplace. So eBay obviously have a bidding system and a payment system, and it actually requires a very small amount of data. So you need a description of your item and a few photos. So I think something like that is very applicable to direct use on blockchain, where you have both data storage mechanism and a payment system rolled into one. Otherwise, yeah, something like where you have IP, which is essentially what GitHub is, copyright IP, that a lot of people would like visibility on and proof of ownership on, and that you might want to license in the future, or perhaps not necessarily license for profit, but prove where you've obtained something, and that at that time it did have this particular license or permission structure. So I think the first use cases would be these quite lightweight distributed systems, and otherwise competitors to also quite lightweight social media packages and things like that. I could imagine also where you own personal data that is also relatively small. In fact, things like genetic data, although it does seem like it's potentially a huge file size, actually you only need to store the variations from standard examples of genomes. And that's quite, I think, a powerful concept that if I have any interaction with the medical system, I own that data and I can flow to other people. I think this is usually very valuable for third opinions.
Medical research?
Yeah, medical research. There's a huge demand from enterprise level players in that environment who want to be able to prove that they obtained that from this person legitimately. So I think the demand for enterprises want to show legitimacy and authenticity of what they're buying, and this would be a mechanism to do that.
And also automata. It might be that automata will work better with the MetaNet structure. If it's able, things like in the future, say if you build a business with some small, simple automatic things, but it needs to crawl MetaNet structures, it will much easier be able to do it then, rather than just crawling BitcoinSV, thinking, oh, I'm trying to find this. If you have a MetaNet structure, it can find the first tag and it can just follow it all the way along.
Yeah, another what springs to mind is websites that want to either be sensor resistant or resistant to denial of service attacks. So these could be personal websites or blogs, where if it's stored on the blockchain, there is literally no way to stop that being accessed. If you want to do it, you pay to upload, and anyone can view it, and you can't be denied that service as easily as you can.
I'm going to throw in the security as well. Bitcoin built on security. The foundation, the economic foundation of Bitcoin lends itself to computer science as well. So if you're building websites on the MetaNet, people trying to hack it will have to use money. They will have to use Bitcoin to do whatever they're doing. If they're trying to interact with it constantly, trying to spam your site, they will have to spend money. And the economic security in that is that, okay, someone might be able to DDoS the site or something, send you loads of, when we have emails working properly on chain, but eventually they're going to run out of money because they're sending you money as well. And even though they're attacking you, you're taking their money. So there's going to be a costly attack for them. But structures on the MetaNet will allow for this. If you're building, compared to like the normal internet, you build a website on the internet and it's great, it's doing fine, but you're always going to tend to have hacking problems, especially when it's involving money. Not just hackers trying to steal your money, but people just trying to destroy your site just because they want to. MetaNet structures, websites on the internet, on the MetaNet, and storing your information on the MetaNet will mean that when it's stored, when it's up there, no one else can alter it, apart from you. And then you create a new web page or new content, and then that new page and content has the newest timestamp, latest timestamp, which then it basically counts as the newer version.
Forget the previous iteration of the website.
I mean, some websites can be designed where it would just overlap like the previous iterations. So people coming to your site, it would only check the latest timestamp, the newest timestamps. So they will always come to refresh websites. And then, as I said, these websites, it's a lot harder to attack when they're literally built on Bitcoin.
That's incredible. This whole concept of these structures and all this back-end technology to bring forth this competitor to the internet almost. What's your kind of gut feeling and personally on how big this is going to be from someone, got their fingers in this?
It's kind of hard to project that far into the future, but I think for sure there will be immediate use cases for people who are willing to pay a premium for the added benefits that we've talked about. So much stronger permission aspect and much more censorship-resistant material. But eventually, if there's a tipping point where data storage on the blockchain is so cheap and easily available, then you'll reach a case where big businesses will not want to pay a continued subscription to AWS. They'll prefer to pay a one-off payment to store their data permanently and immutably on the blockchain. I think there could be a tipping point where there's quite large adoption.
Any comments on that, Ryan, as well, to add to that? What's the vision of this MetaNet, the competitor of the internet?
Yeah, let me give a slightly different sort of product-focused perspective, which is one of the things I like about this is this sort of app-independent data ownership. So what I want to be able to do is write a document in Microsoft Word, swipe MoneyButton, and that's all I have to do to publish it to my WordPress blog. And then people can do things like comment using Microsoft Word, or maybe they use Google Docs or something like that. And all of these different apps are actually interoperable. So using whatever editor you prefer, it's the same data, because the data is, like we used to have this paradigm where you would actually edit files on your computer, but that was just your computer only. And you would have one file that could be opened by two different apps. But we entered a weird world when we started doing the cloud, where you use Google Docs. Cool, I don't have to worry about pressing save, and I can log into another computer and still have my data. Except now you're locked into Google completely. So wouldn't it be interesting if you're not locked in anymore? We have the best of both of these worlds. You have your data the same way as you have stored on your computer, but because it's stored on the blockchain, encrypted and authenticated with yourself, it's actually accessible by every conceivable app. So you could just load a website, and it is an app, and you sign in with MoneyButton and have access to all of your data. So you could do things like take a photo with your camera, and then all you do is like press, blog it or something like that, and it would be on your blog, and you don't have to copy and paste the file. You don't have to upload it, import, export, or anything like that, because if all the data itself is actually on the blockchain, everything could be interoperable, without having to worry about those problems.
I would say we spent 10 years on Bitcoin and trying to build and explain basically how it works. Now that we are back to Bitcoin and now we have the MetaNet going and pushing forward, I think things are going to change. But one of the issues that all the other coins have, they don't understand the MetaNet. They don't even think it's real. They don't understand what's the purpose of this storage information. Even if you tell them, look, we've stored things, they don't understand why. And if you explain to them, hey, you can sort out your tax, you can be more efficient, you can pay your staff, everything, you can cut prices of what you're spending as a business. You can make all your expenses a lot smaller, maybe not all, but most of them. And that, as a business, saves you money. And also, it's the global inclusion. Depending on your type of business, you have a global market. And that's powerful. You can reach a lot of people.
I've got a funny feeling that if all this back-end stuff gets built, all these kind of interpolarity between the websites, all these kind of people building services, the whole, from the content creators, the artists, the music, going back to people filling up this this MetaNet with content. This is going to really free. It's the dream from a musician standpoint to reach the listener directly. No middleman.
Ask any YouTube uploader.
Yeah. How much do YouTube take? Pretty much everything. But it feels like we're at the cusp. Everyone was thinking Bitcoin was just about money, weren't they? They were thinking it was just about,
just about money and just about sending from people around the world, sending you money without interaction from the banks.
Yeah, and it used to be as well, we're going to hide money from the government kind of thing.
It was a misunderstanding.
Yeah.
It was always a misunderstanding. It's pseudonymous, not anonymous.
Yeah.
And with pseudonymous, you get privacy. With privacy, what that means is that you can put your data up there, encrypted data, and then you have a password, and you can provide that to any authority or family member, and they can then see what you've uploaded. The thing about that, though, is obviously block size and limits, script limits. Haven't mentioned that. Script limits, there are still other limits apart from block size which need to be removed. So do expect that, and also the difficulty adjustment. At some point, that needs to go back to the way it was.
Comments there, gentlemen?
Well, in comment to the limits of data you can put in scripts, so there is an original opcode, I think push data 4, which was trying to accommodate up to gigabyte data sizes to be put in the blockchain. Sorry?
Talk closer, my friend. I want to hear your voice.
No.
Closer.
So the other thing I'd comment on is I'm surprised that other blockchains aren't looking into this more. It's not surprising that this is gaining traction from enterprises who actually have problems that this directly addresses. But I think it does have quite important implications, positive implications on the economic model of Bitcoin, because once you start to try to accommodate much larger data structures and file sizes, then that becomes the service that you're mainly charging for. And the transaction fees for a standard transaction, which will be the minimum data unit that you can put on, will start to reduce to almost negligible amounts.
So rewind that a sec for us non-tech people.
Yeah.
So as I understand it, BTC gets its revenue from the block rewards, right? Whereas on SV, the miners make their pennies.
Basically, when things are working better and a bit more fixed, it will be cheaper to upload content. And when you're uploading the content and you realise how much cheaper, you'll realise the turnover within a year will be better than, say, uploading on other platforms.
Yeah, so the block reward was, the idea behind it is it's a subsidy for miners to get the ecosystem going, but eventually, there's a concrete roadmap to phase that out. And the reason why you can phase it out is because adoption is going to increase. We're going to put a lot more data on, and the fees for transactions will then start to dwarf the block reward. And that can only happen if you have a high transaction volume, high data volume, where it makes economic sense to charge more for the fees than you're going to make in the block reward.
Businesses need to emerge and create those transactions and profit in the process. Sorry?
Yeah, any questions? Sorry, folks, I was actually listening, soaking all that in. My brain was going to explode. Any questions from the audience? That's very technical. We're going to turn that magic microphone on.
I have to turn it on? It's okay. I'm going to use my position of power with handing out the microphone to ask the first question. So I've been trying to make MetaNet nodes over the last week, and at first I used MoneyButton and just an op return, and I could make the parent node, but I couldn't append child because I couldn't figure out how to make a second HD wallet myself, and then the MetaWriter came out and that sort of solved the problem, so I started using that. But what I'd really like to be able to do is create a MetaNet parent node that has somehow attached itself to my MoneyButton ID, and obviously not just for me, like so that people can make a parent node that is their MoneyButton ID, and then perhaps create any number of nodes that is just sort of their content, kind of like you've been describing, right? So whether it's an article, whether it's a Twitch, whether it's a Bitstagram. But I wondered if it would be, can you explain how you would do the sort of two simultaneous HD wallets that are required? Because if I understand correctly, MoneyButton is an HD wallet. I guess this is a question mostly for Ryan, I guess. Is there a way to make a separate HD wallet that creates the right addresses that would allow you to write MetaNet edges within the op return whilst simultaneously using MoneyButton? Because that's what I want to do.
Maybe I can comment.
Oh, please.
First. I think Ryan might have some detailed insights, but my understanding of MoneyButton is an alias is uniquely, which is your identity, is uniquely associated with a public key that actually never appears on the blockchain. And from that, it will get, whenever you want to make a transaction with me, it will derive a new it will derive a new key pair for that. So I'd say it's kind of the other way round, rather than linking your MoneyButton alias to a MetaNet node. It's anchoring your MetaNet root node to your MoneyButton alias.
Awesome. Okay, that might solve the problem in that case.
Yeah, I'll say, I mean, it's just a technical, so I haven't thought about things like, because I, as I embarrassingly admitted earlier, have not read the MetaNet white paper, so I don't want to try to comment on, but, you know, you could probably do something where you're writing, I mean, for one thing, you generate new addresses already with MoneyButton, so you would basically need to embed one of those inside that transaction. So we would basically have to specifically support this protocol for you to do it, which is the type of thing we plan to do. I'll say, if I could back up and ask a different question, because I have my own technical question, but I think it's actually related to this, which is that, so Paymail is a way of basically assigning names to keys, and something I didn't hear you address was basically how you deal with naming in a human readable way, because you mentioned eBay.com, but how do I actually go to eBay.com and get my MetaNet node for eBay.com? How do you solve that problem?
In the same way that the internet would use a domain naming system to map eBay.com to whatever particular IP address that would be. What we're, I can't give you a fully packaged solution for that, but what we're trying to do is make that as easy as possible, so the search space to be as small as possible. So rather than every op return, you're just trying to relate a tree, which is specified by a public key in the root, which is not human readable. We want a mapping from a human readable word to that public key. And if we make that search space as small as possible, I think we have the greatest chance of achieving that. Just thinking off the cuff how you might relate a MetaNet tree to kind of MoneyButton systems, I would say you could have a MoneyButton authorized member of the UTXO set that maps my root to my whatever current public key is associated with my MoneyButton account, and if that gets rotated and updated, then I spend the UTXO and I update that again. So the UTXO can be seen as a type of universal memory that maps a MetaNet tree to your current MoneyButton account, which might change because I might sell that to Ryan, so I might have to update the key pair. However, the MetaNet is it's a fixed tree that exists within the blockchain. So from that fixed constant, we have to relate that to a more ephemeral concepts of identity links to public keys. And I think that's a big challenge for the ecosystem, but I mean, it's also the power of Bitcoin. Your identity is not fixed to a public key forever. It might rotate, you might want that to happen, but we want records of when it was, what's happened, how that's updated. So that's how I kind of see that system working.
So let me try and give slightly how I think maybe we'll end up solving this, because something we're doing that's related already.
Live at this show, we're going to solve this technological problem.
Yes, exactly. We will.
That's what I like. I don't understand how it's happening, but we just did it.
I'll tell you.
Go on.
So,
tell me what.
So we already let you attach these names to public keys in Paymail. So one of the things we want to do with Paymail is you should be able to sign something in a transaction. So this is something we have to basically add support for this. So the way this will work is, imagine I want to upload data. Imagine I go to Bitcoin and I want to upload an image. And right now what you can do is you can upload the image goes inside Opportun, and it's uploaded to Bitcoin. Now, what I want to be able to do is actually sign that with my Paymail. So I can say something like, I sign it with Ryan at MoneyButton.com, which is my Paymail. So then I'm signing that. Now, that's related to this idea of the signatures and public keys that you're talking about. What you would also want to do, though, is because you have all of these different nodes, you want to be able to actually upload many of them. You would then want to be able to specify like a public key and or name. So you would actually need to specify which public key you're signing with, or in the Paymail paradigm, you specify your Paymail. So MoneyButton already lets you have many Paymails. So for instance, you could do something like your website is a node, and you could assign a Paymail. So that maps to a public key, which would map into this public key paradigm. Then you could have parts of your website, the sidebar or the footer, which are actually other Paymails with a name that map to different public keys. So when you swipe, you're actually signing something different for that particular node. So in a nutshell, what I'm saying is the feature we're already building in might allow you to do this if we connect the dots correctly. You just need to be able to sign something that you then insert inside the transaction and then publish the blockchain. So anyway, I think we have to figure out the rest of the remaining details, but I think we're going to eventually connect them, the Paymail stuff to this MetaNet stuff, and I think it'll work out.
Joel, any comments on that to add?
I was going to say something, but I thought, I'll be revealing too much. So,
sorry, any questions?
Something just to add, like if you are putting yourself on the MetaNet, like if you put yourself on the internet, you can't say at the moment. You can't say this is me. This is like Joel Dalais here, and put my name. At the moment, though, with Bitcoin, you can put your Paymail and say this is me, this is my signature type of thing. But it is a really, really basic early format, and we are going to get to the point which Ryan and Owen are saying, where it's going to be a combination on the MetaNet, where people will be, all businesses, not just individuals. Tesco's, for example, will upload a site, and you will know it's its site because you will be able to check the Explorer afterwards and think, is this a spoof site or not? You would be able to check the Explorer and see that Tesco at MoneyButton.com has uploaded that site.
Brilliant. More accountability from the MetaNet. Any more questions about MetaNet in general?
Yeah, I got one.
Shoot.
I think the main message here is that we can use the blockchain as a big database, like data storage, which is probably gonna be distributed or stored in multiple places around the world. And I understand the economic model of adding data to this huge database, because you pay the miner based on the amount of data that you are adding. This works all right, but if you think about it, there is a cost in accessing data as well. So it's all right to store it. For example, I can store a movie, but what if I want to watch it like 1 million times? You know, who's paying for that?
Well,
you know,
I mentioned the audio beat earlier, you can already do this with MoneyButton in that you pay for an item and then it recognizes your key.
No, but if you think about a web page, because for example, I've got a web page on the blockchain, yeah? I mean, visitors that want to visit my blockchain, my website. I mean, if you visit eBay.com, you don't want to pay every time when you visit eBay.com, is it? I mean, we have to have a different solution. I understand if you want to listen to something that you pay for it and then it's delivered to you. But if we want to use this for like hosting web pages, which we can today, and they just get delivered to us. But
so I think your question, if I've understood it correctly, is you pay to upload once to your web page, but what incentive is there for someone to maintain that data?
Exactly.
So I'd imagine that in the future, you will, at the moment, kind of miners provide all the services of validating, propagating, and storing. But we could quite easily imagine a node that, let's call it a full copy node, that doesn't have any of the functionality of validating or mining. They're just listening to the blockchain and they're storing everything. And actually the cost of storage is already incredibly low and will only get lower in the future as well. And they could serve the local requests for that data. If the situation arises, I suppose there could be a service for that, but I'd imagine it would be so incredibly cheap. I just don't think that's a bottleneck, basically.
No, but how are you going to pay for that service? Because why would somebody store the data and deliver it to whoever is requesting it?
The blockchain itself is storing the data.
Exactly.
You mean like an explorer, so like a service which, like Bitcoin Media. I mean, why would Bitcoin Media still run so that people can access the information you've uploaded?
Yeah.
They need, well, basically, this is what I've been going on about businesses. Something like that needs to make a business out of it. So you upload data, it's on the blockchain, and let's say Owen provides a service which allows everyone else around the world to look at your music and listen to it. What's going to keep Owen providing this service? Maybe he turns it into a business and charges you a tiny amount for uploading to him. Through him.
I think it empowers the user a lot more. So these services obviously already exist for people who are hosting websites. But if you can be sure that the data exists somewhere, you're not beholden to whatever service provider is offering you that data. So I think in the short term, I imagine it probably could still be a marketplace that you might have to pay to access this data, or the server has to pay. But I think the economic power shifts much more to the user if they can be guaranteed of this universal source of truth and backup for that data.
Okay, thanks.
The data is still there, it just needs if say like one business goes down where everyone was looking at your data, all it needs is someone else to make another business so that they can read your information.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Any more questions or any comments there, gentlemen? Well, we've got at 9:30. It's our food.
I think there's a.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't see them.
Hi. I just wanted to clarify. Within a MetaNet tree, how would someone, or at a given node within the tree, within the op return, how would one specify who's able to, append to that particular node?
Yeah. So in the op return, you specify the public key. That the corresponding private key can be used to grant permission. So if I create the node, I first create the public key that I keep secret. I generate I keep the private key secret. I generate the public key, and that's the permission I assign to that node. So it's contained within put that permission in the op return.
And could I also ask, how do you envision sort of the possible features that can be built out using the MetaNet protocol once the script limits are removed, and there's more sort of flexibility and freedom within the other parts of the script within a given transaction?
I mean, the obvious answer is the amount of data is going to change dramatically, but a more in-depth answer would be when it is perhaps not clear why that's so important for limits to be removed, not only number of opcodes, not only file sizes, but also the arithmetic bit length of operations within script are going to allow for a huge amount of functionality. So a good example would be if I insert data into my transaction. I've authenticated that data with my signature, but I could prove that that data had been authenticated by a trusted oracle or third party. One mechanism that we've explored at nChain is using something called Raven signatures, which is a way to easily authenticate data in script, and they require the removal of limits such as like allowing for big integers and things like that. So you're allowing a lot more functionality associated with your data when such limits are removed.
You can do more complex things. If you have a script limit of like, I don't know what it is at the moment, but if you have a script limit and it runs out, and then whatever you're running just dies. You know, if you remove the script limits, and then you can create programs which will run, wait for trigger effects from Bitcoin or the MetaNet, and then continue running.
So with removing these limitations, you will be able to enable essentially smart contracts on the Bitcoin blockchain. So any spending conditions or permissioning associated with your data, so something that springs to mind what I mentioned is DRM or like IP licensing on the blockchain is essentially a kind of spending condition based on data within that transaction, and those will be opened up significantly when these limits are removed.
So that would apply to using our puzzles for puzzles that the person who's creating them doesn't actually know what the solution is to them, because the verification can be done within the script itself. Would that be possible?
For our puzzles, you can do that with the existing opcodes. They don't. There's only a kind of couple of lines or something like that. But it's a good example of a bit of custom script that gives you additional functionality, and you'll be able to do. The functionality will only increase when these limits are lifted.
Cool. Thank you.
That's all right. Hope that helped. Any more questions? I think we're going to have a little pit stop and a bit of food now, is it? 9:30, sneaky snackies.
Everyone, please use this time to get yourself some food if you're hungry. The bar stops serving food at 10 to 10, so if you're hungry, order, buy now, and eat. After 10 o'clock, we will clear up the chairs a bit and put on some music.
Got Sam Cox doing his DJ magic.
I want to thank you all again for coming, and if you could please give a round of applause to our gentleman up here.
And Ryan X.